All right, let's jump right into something that's buzzing across pretty much all industries, but we're going to specifically zero in on aviation today.
Yeah, specifically artificial intelligence within airport operations.
Exactly. We've been doing a deep dive into some really interesting insights from the International Association of Airport Executives, the IAE's 6th Global Aviation Forum.
Right, it was all virtual this time. And we've pulled out some, I think, really key moments, focusing on maybe some surprising angles and definitely the real-world challenges of actually getting AI into airports.
Yeah, our mission here is really to unpack the most important nuggets from those talks for you. Like, where is AI actually making a difference right now?
Yeah.
Where are those maybe unexpected opportunities? And maybe even more importantly, where are the challenges hiding? Especially in parts of the airport you might not even think about much.
Get ready for a few surprises, maybe.
Definitely some eyebrow raisers in there.
Okay, so let's unpack this potential. One perspective that came up pretty early was AI's ability to personalize things. Moving beyond just marketing to big groups of travelers.
Right, getting down to that more one-to-one level, understanding what an individual traveler actually needs or wants.
Exactly. That makes sense on the passenger side. But the discussions, they went much deeper, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. The real power, it seems, or at least a big part of it, is how AI can start unifying all these systems that have always been, well, totally separate.
Absolutely. Think about it. You've got point-of-sale data from the shops. You've got flight data coming in, staffing schedules, passenger flow predictions.
All living in their own little worlds, usually.
Right, their own silos. AI has this potential to pull all that together into one, cohesive, intelligent ecosystem.
Okay, so what happens when you bring all that disparate data together? What's the actual outcome?
Well, it unlocks the ability to make real-time decisions based on a much more complete picture. One speaker at the forum really hammered this home. They said bringing these often incompatible data types together makes it possible to, and this is a quote, find things that have never been humanly possible before.
Never been humanly possible.
Yeah.
That's quite a statement. What exactly did they mean?
Well, they followed up by saying humans, quote, will not be able to do it ourselves. It's really about the sheer scale and complexity.
Just too much going on at once.
Yeah, processing and connecting all those different data streams simultaneously, spotting hidden patterns, predicting issues before they happen. It's just beyond what one person or even a team can typically handle without AI helping out. It shows you things you just couldn't see otherwise.
Okay, so unifying vast amounts of data, getting insights beyond what we could do alone. That's definitely powerful. But while that's kind of happening across the airport, there's this other perspective from Brian Freed of Illuminex AI. And he really zoomed in on a specific area, one that's often maybe overlooked, the airfield itself.
Yeah.
And related to that, terminal defense.
Yeah, the airfield. It often doesn't get that same kind of tech spotlight as, say, the check-in areas or the fancy new security scanners.
And Brian shared a data point about this that was, well, it was genuinely startling.
You're talking about the comparison he made between, like, our average online life and the digital footprint of this really critical airport area.
Exactly that one.
Yeah.
Think about how much data you generate just browsing, streaming, shopping online.
A lot.
He said the average North American consumer generates around 120 gigabytes of online data. And he put it in this amazing perspective. If you printed it double-sided, it'd be a stack of paper 2 miles high.
2 miles
Yeah.
for one person's data. Wow.
And companies spend, fortunes analyzing that data to understand us, sell us stuff, generate revenue.
Okay, so that's the consumer side. Now, contrast that with what he said about a medium hub airport's entire digital footprint for its airfield.
Right. Get this. According to the numbers shared, it was just over 5 gigabytes.
Wait, just 5 gigabytes. That's tiny. Less data for the whole critical airfield than one person generates online.
Exactly. You have this absolutely vital piece of infrastructure, the airfield, driving billions in economic value, right? But when it comes to actual usable digital data, it's effectively a data desert, as he called it.
Wow. That contrast really does highlight a massive untapped opportunity then.
So it flips the problem, doesn't it? Instead of being drowned in data like companies tracking consumers, the challenge on the airfield is the lack of useful data, and AI can step in there.
Absolutely. That data desert means there's just a huge potential to use AI not just to analyze existing data, but almost to create actionable intelligence where there basically wasn't any before.
Okay.
And this leads directly to improving operations. Think predictive maintenance on equipment, making activities proactive instead of just reacting to problems, enhancing safety in a big way, and just optimizing how resources get allocated out there in this really critical but data-starved environment.
Okay, so how does AI actually, step into this data desert on the airfield? What are the specific technologies being used? Are we talking bleeding edge stuff?
Well, actually, they highlighted using quite mature technologies, things like object detection.
Ah,
They made a point of saying this is different from, say, large language models, which are maybe at the peak of the AI hype cycle right now.
right, the chatbots and stuff.
Exactly. Object detection, though, it's proven, it's benefited from decades of research. So they're taking this really reliable tech and applying it to these new critical use cases right there on the airfield.
Okay, so not necessarily experimental AI, but solid tech applied cleverly. What were some of those specific practical use cases they mentioned?
Well, things like foreign object and debris detection, FOD, spotting potentially hazardous items on the runway or taxiways.
Super important for safety.
Hugely important. Also, human and animal intrusion detection, which is another safety and security issue. Even things like profiling snowdrifts to understand their impact, analyzing the surface conditions like pavement integrity, and even checking the lighting systems.
These sound like jobs that historically were all done by people, right? Physically driving around, looking, inspecting.
Exactly. These were tasks fundamentally limited by, well, human perception, as
Yeah.
they put it. What could an inspector visually spot and maybe jot down in a notebook during their limited time covering these huge airfield areas?
There are going to be blind spots. Things get missed.
Inevitably, there were inherent limitations and inefficiencies.
And this is where that really impactful phrase from the forum comes in. They talked about using AI and sensor fusion, quote, not to replace people, but to effectively give them superpowers.
It's a great way to frame it, isn't it?
Yeah. What does that actually look like for an employee out there on the airfield? What are these superpowers?
Well, it's about augmenting their abilities, helping employees see more, measure more precisely, than they ever could before just with their own eyes.
Okay.
So instead of just visually spotting something and maybe making a note, you have sensors and AI transforming those observations into usable data that can be shared and analyzed almost instantly.
So it's faster, more accurate data collection.
Right. It lets them effectively cover more ground, focus their human expertise where it's really needed most, and react much faster to potential issues. It's really about making their critical job more effective and ultimately safer.
Giving employees superpowers, I like that. It really crystallizes the value prop. Now, making this whole system work on the airfield, especially with, all those sensors collecting data constantly, that must require some specific tech infrastructure, right?
Oh, absolutely. A key piece they talked about, a technological necessity for this kind of airfield AI, particularly when you're fusing data from multiple sensors, is edge processing.
Edge processing. Okay, explain that. Why is processing the data at the edge, like right there on the airfield, rather than sending it off somewhere else? Why is that so crucial?
It comes down to the sheer volume of data. A sensor fusion platform, like the kind they were describing, can generate, potentially, get this, 2 terabytes of data an hour.
2 terabytes an hour. Wow.
Yeah. So trying to transfer all of that raw data to the cloud, process it remotely, and then get a timely response back for something like, an immediate hazard detection on the runway.
It's too slow.
It's really impossible, as they put it. By the time the alert comes back, the situation on the ground could have completely changed. The hazard might be gone, or worse.
Okay, yeah, 2 terabytes an hour.
Yeah.
You definitely need a solution that's much, much faster. So processing locally, right there at the edge, that's the answer.
Yes. And thanks to advances in things like GPUs, graphics processing units, that real-time processing is now possible right there at the edge.
So the analysis happens instantly.
Pretty much. It allows for instant identification of a hazard or an anomaly. It can immediately alert an inspector, maybe even trigger an automated response in some cases. Plus, it massively reduces the bandwidth needed because you're only sending the important stuff back, the alerts, the findings, not that raw 2 terabyte an hour fire hose of information.
That makes sense. And did they touch on the cost? Is implementing this kind of edge processing and sensor network super expensive?
They did touch on that. And interestingly, they mentioned that leveraging these technologies is actually becoming more cost-effective and scalable.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, largely due to what they described as radical price decay in sensor prices over the years. The technology for the sensors themselves has gotten much cheaper.
Oh,
So the tech is mature, it works, and it's becoming more affordable than it used to be. That's making these kinds of advanced applications much more viable for airports.
okay, so the tech is ready. It's getting more accessible. But The forum discussions also got into the hurdles, right? The challenges of actually deploying AI on the airfield.
Mhm.
It's not all smooth sailing.
Not at all. They absolutely did. And probably the biggest one that came up, especially during the Q&A session, was what they called the human challenge.
Ah, right. The classic fundamental question people always ask, is this AI thing here to take my job?
Exactly. That suspicion, that concern, it's real. Especially in these really critical operational roles, like the ones out on the airfield. People value their expertise.
So how do you address that?
Well, the suggested solution from the source wasn't just about the tech. It was really about educating both the staff as well as the management on the operational teams.
Communication, basically.
Yeah, communication is key, clearly showing them how AI is a tool, how it's making their jobs better, safer, maybe even more interesting rather than just replacing them. Demonstrating that superpower idea we talked about.
That makes perfect sense. If you genuinely understand it's there to help you do your job better, not make you redundant, the whole perspective shifts, right?
Precisely.
Okay, so the human challenge is one. What was the second major challenge they brought up for airfield AI?
It goes back to data, actually.
Yeah.
A tremendous lack of data to train AI models specifically for these airfield scenarios.
Okay, hang on. Didn't we just talk about sensors potentially generating 2 terabytes of data an hour? How can there be a lack of data?
Right, that's the potential for future data once you have all the sensors deployed and running. The challenge is the historical data needed to train the AI in the first place, especially data on incidents or anomalies.
Ah, I see. Because you fix problems quickly.
Exactly. Think about it. If someone spots a piece of FOD on the runway, it gets removed immediately, right? Safety is absolutely paramount, so issues get fixed very rapidly.
Which means you don't build up a big library of examples of what FOD looks like,
Mhm.
or what a certain kind of pavement crack looks like.
Precisely. There's a limited amount of historical data capturing those specific events or discrepancies that an AI model needs to learn from initially. It needs to see lots of examples to understand what an anomaly actually looks like in different conditions.
Right, okay. It's hard to train an AI to spot rare problems if you don't have many recorded examples of those past rare problems. So how are airports or the tech companies addressing that data scarcity?
The source offered a few interesting ways they're tackling this. One is using synthetic data generation.
Creating fake data.
Essentially, yeah, creating realistic simulated data that mimics real-world scenarios for training the AI. Another approach is planned data sharing between different airports.
Ah, pooling resources.
Exactly, allowing models to learn from a wider, more diverse range of incidents than any single airport might experience. And they even mentioned staging incidents.
Staging incidents, like deliberately creating a problem.
In a controlled environment, yes. So you can carefully generate specific, real-world training data for particular scenarios the AI needs to learn about.
This deep dive has certainly opened my eyes. We've seen AIs already making real waves in aviation, everything from that hyper-personalization for travel, as we mentioned early on, all the way to tackling these critical but often overlooked areas like the airfield data desert.
Yeah, and it's clear that specific, mature technologies, like that object detection, are enabling tangible gains right now in safety and efficiency. Not just hype, but real application.
But we've also heard that despite all that potential, the challenges are real too. Navigating those human concerns about job security and overcoming that surprising lack of good training data in certain areas, it requires really thoughtful, proactive solutions.